To Tav and Tav not, the end of James Tavernier's Rangers career is nigh. It's all to play for to avoid a relegation playoff and victory for Valakari as the big time beckons once again for St Johnstone. Hello, I'm David Currie and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need. Maybe some stuff you don't need as well on Thursday the 23rd of April. And after over a decade with the club, the Rangers captain has announced he's leaving.
Captain James Tavernier has announced he'll leave Rangers at the end of the season. That after 11 years at Ibrox. He's British football's highest scoring defender, the 34-year-old leading Rangers for the past 8 years.
How do we assess James Tavernier's Ibrox career? And the clubs at the wrong end of the table face the prospect of the playoffs.
Goal for Aberdeen. Oh, it's there! It's the equaliser for Dundee.
Oh, goal, St Mirren!
And he has given Kilmarnock the lead here.
Who will end up in the dreaded 11th place? Things, though, are looking up for the Championship winners.
St Johnstone have won the Championship in terrific fashion. Simo Valakari has guided them back to the big time.
We'll scrutinise St Johnstone as we meander through the maze that is Scottish football.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Yes, hello and welcome one and all to today's Scottish Football Podcast with esteemed guests today. Stephen McGowan, the Herald football writer at large, and Robbie Neilson, former Hearts and Dundee United manager, now plying even his trade in Belgium. And it's a big night for you, Robbie, tonight.
Yeah, it's DC. Tonight's the first game in the playoffs, so looking forward to it. We've got RFC Liège at home, so it's home and away 3 times to try and get promoted into 1A, so looking forward to it. Just
remind listeners the club you're with and indeed who the manager is.
So I'm in at Lomeless K at the moment, so we're part of the City Football Group, and it's Lee Johnson, the ex-Hibs manager, so Lee and I go back a long way, so I'm over here helping him try to get promoted.
Well, we wish you the very, very best for tonight and the rest of the playoffs, Robbie. Stephen, this is it, almost the final furlong, as it were, in the SPFL and in the Premiership, the title race. Are you ready with your perfect prose for this?
I don't know about perfect prose. I think I'm preparing for a bit of toxicity in the weeks to come.
Oh, come on.
Well, I think we have to be realistic about it. I think 5 fixtures left to go, 3 teams going hell for leather for it, and I think there will be a few twists and turns along the way.
But toxicity? Where's that coming from?
Well, when you've got 3 teams level pegging, apart from Celtic, 3 points behind, and the very real possibility of sporting integrity rows, refereeing disputes, VAR. I don't think it was that controversial a statement, David, to be honest with you.
Right, that's it.
All makes for good reporting, Stephen, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, that's enough for today's podcast, folks. We'll see you later. No, let's continue, and we have to start off with James Tavernier. It's almost all over for him, Robbie, as a player that played that position right back in the day. Maybe didn't score as many goals as Tavernier right enough, but how do you assess him and his career at Ibrox?
I think he's been an absolutely fantastic signing for Rangers. You know, if not one of the best value for money for what they got, taking him from Wigan 10, 11 years ago, and I think for $250,000 to score the amount of goals he's scored and the amount of appearances, and you know, all right, people speak about maybe not won as much as previous players in that position, but you've got to look at the context of what Celtic were doing in that period. But I think he's been outstanding. And I thought he might have got another year, maybe another year or 2, because he's played a lot of games this season, scored a lot of goals as well. So yeah, I was quite surprised when I saw that he was leaving. Whether it's through his choice or the club, I don't know. But I think he's been outstanding. And I think in years to come, people will look back on it with probably rosier glasses.
Yep, hindsight, the perfect science, Stephen, maybe?
Yeah, he's definitely one of these players that fit into that category of inverted commas. They'll miss him when he's gone and he'll only really be fully appreciated when that's the case. But it's complicated. Robbie's absolutely right. I mean, for the cash paid tremendous piece of value. 562 games, 144 goals, 148 assists. Won a league, won a Scottish Cup, won a League Cup. He led Rangers to a UEFA Cup final in Seville, which I think probably was his highlight of his time at Rangers. But there is always a but with James Tavernier, because he was a polarising figure, because he won 3 out of 30 major tournaments, major trophies. And I think there's always that feeling that, I think Robbie's right to point out the context of Celtic, the resources, the dominance they enjoyed, but I think there's always a feeling with a Rangers captain there should be more than that along the way. Not only that, but also that feeling that he didn't defend as well as he might have at times, because we can all remember high-profile examples like Dizer Maeda and so on, where big games where goals seem to be lost down his side of the pitch. And I'd be interested in Robbie's point of view on that, actually, because, I mean, that was just always the criticism that came at him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was his style of play, but I think if you were looking for a full-back to play those amount of games and, not score the amount of goals, maybe score 10 to 15, I played, I think, nearly 400 games in my career and scored 2.
There were 2 crackers, though.
Yes. So for him to score 144, there's going to be an issue somewhere, and a lot of time it was the defensive aspect because he was so attack minded and scoring so many goals. But yeah, I think that was always the issue when you played against Rangers, that you looked at from an attacking perspective. You would look at that area behind Tavernier because he played so high. And when I think when he had players round about him, like Lundstrom for a while covered him quite a bit. Conor Golson was really good at covering that area as well. When he didn't have those players round about him, either through not being at the club or through injury, it made that area a lot more easy to expose. So I think the balance of the team, when it was good, it really helped him defensively. When it wasn't, it made it very difficult for him.
Stephen, you're talking about the context there, and I was just having a wee look through. I was reading how many managers he'd played under, and it's quite startling. You look at the instability that's been at Ibrox in that time. I mean, it says 10 Rangers managers he played under, obviously a few of them interim. I was making it 11 if you include Barry Ferguson, right enough. I mean, it starts with Mark Warburton all the way through Murty, Kashinya, who have we got there? Somebody under my... Jimmy Nicholl, interim, Stephen Gerrard, Van Bronckhorst, Beale, Davis, Clement, Ferguson and Danny Roll. I mean, that tells its own story.
I think it does. I think it's an important point. And as you say, if you're talking about context, you have to include that. I mean, it's not James Tavernier's fault that for an awful lot of the time he's been at Rangers, the club has been a bit of a basket case. You look at the ownership, as you say, you look at the revolving door of managers. The problem for him was that he became almost guilty by association with that, because quite often as a captain, he was pushed out in front of the cameras to say how disappointed he was with it. And you got to a point where opposition fans were referring to him as Captain Disappointment, because he was the one who was shoved out there to kind of justify this. And that was a bit unfair on him, because I think if Rangers had had more James Taverniers, they would have been a better team. So it was unfortunate, but that's the facts of life when it comes to Celtic and Rangers. If you are a captain of those clubs, you are expected to be pictured holding trophies above your head. And I think there's just this feeling that in terms of Tavernier, whereas he will be remembered as a Hall of Famer, as a very good Rangers player, was he as accomplished, as decorated as he should have been over that time? Possibly not.
Does he fit the qualification then to be remembered as a great Rangers captain, Robbie?
I think he does, but I agree with Stephen. I think that, Rangers captains are judged on trophies, and he went through a period where he obviously didn't win a lot of trophies. But I think when we look back in 10, 15, 20 years' time, he'll be viewed as a great for what he did. I think at the moment he's the leading European appearance holder along with Alan McGregor. That amount of appearances, 6 in the club's history, second highest goal scorer as well. So when you put those contexts together, you see that he's a great... I think at the moment we're just looking at trophies won. He's not won many as Rangers captain over that period, but over time those thoughts will dissipate and people will realise what a top player he's been.
I think we are judging these guys sometimes, David. You look ahead to the future and try and project, and you think, okay, when he comes out to make the halftime draw at Ibrox in 5 or 6 or 10 years or whatever, what kind of round of applause will he get? I think it'll be a rousing Round of applause.
Yeah,
And
I
probably
agree.
that's the judgment.
End of an era, then, in many ways. Is this really the start properly of the Danny Rowell era?
I think it's a chance for Danny Rowell now to really put his mark on the team. You know, there'll be a lot of changes in the summer, obviously, with Tavernier going, you know, a new captain coming in, main captain. And I think it's an opportunity for him to really put his stamp on the team now.
Right, final question in this wee section. I'll put it to you both. Stephen, you first. Will Tavernier get the Hollywood ending by lifting the Premiership trophy? Will it end with a whimper or a bang?
You would be as well asking me for the lottery numbers on Saturday night.
I'll get them
I mean,
later.
the odds of getting this right are slightly less. I mean, it's guesswork, isn't it? I think what's good from a Rangers perspective is whether they were expecting this or not. There are mixed reports on this, because on Monday he was saying that, you know, he hadn't been offered a new contract. He wasn't sure what the future held. Well, he clearly did know what the future held because it was clearly carefully managed. But the good thing is that he can go out in a bit of a high. He can go out with goodwill and good feeling, whatever happens, because there's going to be an air of unity to get towards that title now. Will Rangers win it? Your guess is as good as mine.
Robbie?
I'm going to agree with Stephen on that one, DC. Covered it all
discretion is the better part of valour. Let's talk then about jeopardy and the clubs who are still in it Premiership-wise. Livy could go down at the weekend. Can they possibly save themselves, is my first question to you, Mr. Neilson.
No. For a short answer to that one, I think it's been a difficult season for them. I just think that there are teams above them have got so much to play for. I just don't see them going on a run. They haven't managed to do a run that they need for that whole entire time in the Premier League or the Premiership. So I just don't see it now. You know, I think it's starting to plan now for the Championship.
By the way, just to go back, a wee note from the producer there saying I forgot to mention Russell Martin as the Rangers manager there. That was another one.
Easily forgotten. Easily forgotten. To be fair.
No, not for Rangers fans. To be fair,
yeah.
Right. Let's get back to the wrong end of the table, as it were, and the runners and riders in that one. I'm just wondering, Stephen, Aberdeen beat Hibs in their last outing. Does it look to you as though maybe they're not out of the tunnel, but it's maybe not quite as dark in there as we thought it was?
I think that was a big win, wasn't it? I think even seeing Kevin Nisbet getting back to scoring goals again was a big thing for Aberdeen. I mean, the last time I think I did this, we were talking about Aberdeen being on this death slide where it looked as if they were really hurtling towards a really bad place, and that win just changed the narrative and the perception. I mean, if you look at the table now, they're 5 points clear of Kilmarnock. Can Kilmarnock retrieve that? I don't know if they can. So I think Aberdeen have given themselves a bit of breathing space. They also, critically, they've got a home game against Kilmarnock this weekend. So it could be a big scenario there, because if Aberdeen beat Kilmarnock and St Mirren beat Livingston, not only do they consign Livingston to effectively the drop, but they would put a bit of space between themselves and Kilmarnock as well. So it's a big weekend, certainly a big day on Saturday in terms of that scenario.
Well, let's talk about Kelly, Robbie. As Stephen mentioned there, they're away to Aberdeen, and it's been their form on the road that's been their Achilles heel, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the game at the weekend's huge for both clubs. I think if Aberdeen win that, in my opinion, they're safe, and then they can start planning for next season, gives them a bit extra time. If they lose that, they're back in it. And I think that the game against Hibs, the previous game against Hibs, Hanley getting sent off after 14 minutes, could have been a season-defining moment for Aberdeen because it changed the game. But Kilmarnock's perspective, I think Neil McCann's come in and he's really brought energy and togetherness to the club. I think they needed it. I think at the point when he came in, they were on that slide. I think now they'll see the game at the weekend, and knowing Neil pretty well, he's a positive guy and he'll be going up there trying to win the game. So I think this again it's a huge game for both teams.
There are Kelly just a couple of points behind St Mirren. Kelly 28, St Mirren 30 points. St Mirren have got a better goal difference. However, what they don't have by the looks of things at the moment, Stephen, is somebody other than the 17-year-old Grant Tamasavicius to play in goals. I mean, Shamal George injured, Peter Arminsky injured, and Ryan Mullen tweeting last night that he's bust his quad. So we're not going to see him for a wee while.
Yeah. I mean, he's also busting a few conspiracy theories as well, Ryan Mullen, wasn't he?
I mean,
Because
come on.
some ridiculous stuff going around after the weekend there about, going off and so on. Whatever the circumstances of that, it looks very much as if it was a legitimate injury. So I think a few people owe him an apology. Not that they'll have a decency to do it, of course, if they're saying that in the first place. But yeah, I think they'll need to try and go and get an emergency loan in as a goalkeeper. Never an ideal situation. Although I have to say, I thought the kid did well. I mean,
Yep.
Obviously Celtic cut loose in extra time and scored a few, as I think people were waiting for him to do for a while. But you certainly wouldn't attach any blame to the 17-year-old goalkeeper for that. So I think if they had to send him into battle again, then it wouldn't be the end of the world. But would Craig McLeish want somebody a bit more experienced, probably?
Robbie, I'm reading there. St Johnstone's Ross Sinclair is one of the candidates maybe to be brought in.
Potentially, I think that I think the young goalie came in and did well, but I think it's a highly pressurised environment to go into these games. So I think they'll probably be looking to bring someone in.
Going to need someone for the bench as well, though, aren't they?
Yeah, and unless Jamie Langfield's going to step up.
Aye, maybe.
So but the difficulty you have at this moment in time is that whoever you bring in probably isn't playing or hasn't played for a long period, so they're not match ready. So I think Craig McLeish has got a big decision to make, because I think I thought they did really well in the semi-final up until the extra time period. So does he run with a young keeper, give him an opportunity? Because sometimes there's only one way to find out if they can handle the pressure. You look at a young Craig Gordon get chucked in many years ago and stood up to it. And he came in and became one of the best goalkeepers we've ever seen in Scotland. So yeah, big decision, but it's going to be difficult period for St Mirren.
Difficult. Maybe not quite as difficult a period for Dundee. They're above St Mirren, 3 points above them. Their first post-split fixture is a wee trip to Tannadice. They've been getting a lot of plaudits, Dundee, but when you look at the stats, they've only won 2 out of their last dozen games.
Yeah, I think that Stephen came in at the start of the season. He would agree himself. He wasn't the popular choice, but he's turned that around amazingly. I think that again they've got a real solid group in there. They've got goal scorers, got good defenders. They're a solid team. I think the last time they went to Tannadice, they won 1-0, so they'll have confidence going there. The previous derby at home was 2-2, so they've proven that Stephen's very, very experienced. He knows how to stay in these big games and win these big games. So I think they'll be fine. I think they've got enough in their squad, both at either end of the pitch, to keep them in the league this year.
Yeah, where are all these people who wanted Stephen Presley hunted earlier in the season now? They've gone kind of quiet, haven't they? I mean, I remember going up to see him in Dundee, and it was after a period where there was an open letter from supporters calling for the heads of John Nelms and Gordon Strachan and Stephen Presley. And he went into a situation where I think he admitted himself he didn't necessarily know exactly what he was getting into. He's not a person who's on social media. He's not someone who knew the kind of level of unease about him going in as manager and outright opposition. So he arrived at the press conference and he faced this kind of barrage of criticism before he did a day in the job, really. But I think he's pretty much silenced that. And okay, they're not absolutely out of the woods yet, but my goodness, if they could get something out of Dundee Derby, then once again he would have shown that the empty vessels were totally wrong about him.
Right then, I want to know, you were both very coy about who you think's going to actually win the title. Maybe you'll be a wee bit more willing to put your necks on the line with this one. What's your feeling, Robbie, you first, about who will finish next to bottom and go into the perilous playoffs?
To be honest with you, I think it will change weekly. I think this weekend will potentially either drag one or two in or free one or two. So it could be anything. You're looking at Kilmarnock and St Mirren probably at the moment as the two that I would say would be battling it out for that, but that could change by 5 o'clock on Saturday.
Stephen?
Yeah. I think going next weekend, I mean, you've got St Mirren going away to Dundee. You've got Kilmarnock at home where they are strong against Dundee United, who may by then be pretty safe. So absolutely. I mean, I think with the top and the bottom, I've got one thing in common, which is that all the teams are going to drop points and make mistakes. I think it's just going to be a case of who makes the fewest mistakes. And it really will come down to that, who holds their nerve.
Finally then, folks, today let's talk St Johnstone. They've done it. They've won the Championship. Congratulations to them. But what will the future hold for them next season? Stephen, the American owners talked about sustainable growth. Is that the way forward for St Johnstone in the season ahead? Slow and steady wins the race?
Absolutely. I think Adam Webb deserves an awful lot of credit. I've spoken to him a couple of times this season. And he had a choice to make this time last year. I mean, it would have been the easy scenario to jettison Simo Valakari and go back to the start, as I've seen with so many American owners in British football. But what happened was that Valakari went out to Atlanta where Adam Webb lives. There were 2 or 3 nights of eating, and probably a drink or two was passed as well. And they talked it out and they decided to go back to the drawing board and reset the club. And I think they've done a good job of that. He decided to go with Valakari. He liked what he saw. He saw enough to place some faith in the manager. And I think that's been justified because you talk about the team that wins the title deserves it. Well, St Johnstone have been top pretty much since day one. And okay, there was 1 or 2 slight wobbles where, Partick Thistle were given a bit of hope, but they've done it comfortably in the end. And actually, you tend to forget that even Falkirk, who've had all this praise this year, rightly so, for finishing in the top 6, they had a big wobble at the end of last season as well. So St Johnstone have been steady, they've been reliable and consistent. I think they're really worthy champions. And I think a lot of credit goes not only to Simo Valakari and his players, but I think also to Adam Webb, the owner.
Has Simo got a lot of just big decisions to make, Robbie, in terms of playing style? Does he persist with it? And also in terms of personnel?
Yeah, I think he does, DC. I think that, that was probably his big decision when he got relegated down. Previously in the top flight, he'd been playing like 3-4-3, 5-4-1. And it was quite expansive. And then they went down to the Championship and they've changed it to like a 4-2-3-1. But I would say a lot more attack-minded, scoring a lot of goals. But when you come back up, do you change your style again? Or do you do what Falkirk did and continue to play the way they did? And they've been really, really good this season, managed to get top 6. I think losing McPake is going to be a big loss for him, the goals that he had. Obviously, there's a couple of lone players in there, the young goalkeepers away, Forrester's back to Hearts, Payton. So there's going to be quite a bit of recruitment getting done. I think the back line has got Baird and Smith in it, guys in their early-ish 30s. Do you need to replace them to come into the top flight? So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Does he try and continue to play that expansive, expressive football as Falkirk have shown you can do, or does he become a little bit more defensive-minded?
It's funny, I just thinking about that, Robbie, and we discussed this last season, was one of the observations was he doesn't seem to be a manager who's much of a defensive thought in his mind sometimes, does he? I mean, I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean, I think he probably is cut from the John McGowan mould where you say, well, I mean, John said when he went up to the Premiership, try to get players who are quicker, more physical, and still play the same way. And I wonder if Valakari will try and go down the same road. And you welcome that because you've seen Falkirk, you've seen Motherwell this season, show that you don't have to park the bus all the time. You can still try and play football and have a bit of success in the Premiership. Now, I just have a feeling that Valakari might be cut from that cloth again.
I really hope he does, because I think that John's shown you can do that. I think when Simo came in at first, he tried to do it with a team he'd inherited that didn't have the quality and the ability to play that system. Whereas when he went into the Championship, he's been able to mould the team a little bit, and I hope that when he comes back up, he can stick to his principles and recruit the players that can do that, as John has shown he can do. I don't think there's as big a gulf now between the top end of the Championship and the middle of the Premiership, to be honest, anymore. So I think you can do that if you get the recruitment right.
Is that right? Why do you think that is, that gulf is reduced?
I just think that the quality of the teams and the quality of the players and also the budgets as well aren't that vast in the difference. I think obviously when you've got your Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, Dundee United to an extent is a different ball game. But these other teams, it's not you're not talking 3-4 times the budget. You're talking maybe double, 1.5 times the budget. So if your recruitment's right, you can definitely compete.
I'm a bit worried here, David, if we're getting close to the Neilson calling for reconstruction here to a bigger Premiership.
Yeah, that's next on the cards, yes, Stephen.
That's it.
We'll keep that for next season. Right, folks, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this fine spring Thursday. Many thanks to Stephen McGowan of the Herald and Robbie Neilson, and just reiterate all the very best to Robbie and his team tonight in the Belgian promotion playoffs. Remember, we are here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast, bright, breezy and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. And I wish you all the very best, folks. Have a great day and enjoy your football.
It's petty, it's ill-informed.
Are President Trump's cuts having an adverse effect on research?
It's pandemonium.
What number's that in the periodic table?
PD, number 47. I don't know.
I've done the shooting clays before. The longer you do it, the shorter obviously it gets.
When Craig said there he'd been shooting the clays, I imagined him out a back line. Somebody's washing, you know.
William Shatner, his secretary, contacted me to say, when Bill has a question now and again, can he contact you? And then one time he called me up and he wanted to know, David, what is a photon? I'm thinking, this is incredible. Captain Kirk wants to know what a photon is, you know.
I once met a guy who referred to a globe as a ball map. A ball map.
A ball map. Look at the ball map.
What we normally do is spin the ball map and we see where we go on holiday.
The Off the Ball podcast, available every Monday on BBC Sounds.